Let's
I'll
do it.
give you.
Excellent. Excellent. So, hi, Kevin.
Hello. Nice to see you, Chris.
Nice to see you too. So glad we were finally able to meet.
Likewise.
So I want to jump right into it because, we had we had Google/Zoom issues today, and we're late getting started. So I really want to jump in and dive right into the, usually we have some little chit chat, but I'm going to start right away with interrogating you.
Okay, go for it.
So one of the things, my podcast is Financial Independence, Long Life. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice, I guess. And I think a lot of us struggle with financial independence, like the idea of it. It's like this vague sort of ethereal sort of thing. And I feel like, you're meant to, all the things I read and Napoleon Hill and everybody that you talk to, you have to kind of visualize and get emotionally attached to this idea of money. And I feel like it's kind of difficult with money because it's such an abstract thing. So you talk about meaningful money. Tell me how, I can use the idea of meaningful money to manifest more money into my life.
Okay, well, let's just go to a real basic thing, a natural law called the law of cause and effect. Okay, if money is your cause, then what's your effect? Usually for most people, if they're chasing money, other people realize it and they actually have a downward effect because people sort of grab a hold of their pockets because they feel like it's just about the transaction,
right,
and not about the real service that's involved. So what I do is first you have to look at it and say, what is meaningful money? And so I reverse that and say that if you start off with your purpose and your effect is profit or money, and in between a purpose and that effect of profit or money is people.
right.
And so when you have a purpose and then you work with people, you're now bringing meaning into the relationship. And from that meaningful relationship, you're going to make meaningful money at a deep heart level, as well as in the pockets, because that's financial profit in that regard, which when you talk about money, you're generally talking in that regard. And so that's the way that you create meaningful money. Now, the other side of the coin is, going to the financial independence part of it. Financial independence is one of those things that it can be a forever moving target. And so what I've heard from financial planners that I know is they'll say things like, pick a goal line. It's kind of like if a football team is playing and the goal line is, they forever are moving the goal line. They never get to score. They never get to celebrate. So
right.
If you set a goal, then you work towards it. Now, what's interesting about that, though, is I could be talking to somebody who's making $50,000 a year, and they look at it and say, wow, if I ever made $75,000 a year, I would be financially independent. And so for them, that extra $25,000, or let's say approximately $2,200 a month, is meaningful money.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that there can be an amount of money that is meaningful, and then as they get from 50 to 75, they've covered that meaningful money at that point. Now they might look at it and say, "Wow, I realize I could do $100,000 a year in revenue, or $250,000, or $1 million a year." That $1 million mindset that you talk about,
yeah.
And they may have to move there in incremental steps of meaningful money, but if they're earning it and it's meaningful to them, there's another payday that's involved in that as well.
Yeah, the money becomes secondary.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, it's easy to fall into the meaningful money trap of it's just all meaning, but not the money. So it's the combination of meaningful and money that really makes it work.
Yeah, it's true, because you can love what you do and just want to give it away and not really. And I think other people don't value it as much either, sadly. If you are just sort of giving everything away, they're not seeing, they're thinking, oh, is this person really an expert? Surely they'd charge something if they're, if I paid $50,000 for this advice, then I would follow it, right?
Right.
But yeah, and the other piece of that, though, also is, which is not, I think, necessarily what you're talking about, but the if you're making, when you make that extra 25,000 or that extra $2,200 a month, if you then start spending $2,500 a month with that new money, then suddenly, oh, oops, I'm still not financially independent because I still need more money than I am actually bringing in. Which,
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm not a budget and investment guy.
no.
But I would agree with you. I mean, I am a business person, so I certainly understand that if you ramp up your expenses more than your income, it eventually is going to catch up with you on either credit cards or in some other way that you're going to fund yourself.
Right.
Or you just have to learn fiscal management at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're right. So how do people get to that point where they can shift their thinking? How do you help people shift their thinking and stop thinking about, oh, I've just got to have this money? Because I see that a lot in real estate agents, especially when they're just getting started, that they're like, I'm not making any money, right? We don't get paid to show up to work. We don't get paid to do anything except sell property or rent property. And, they have that pressure, like, oh my God, like I need this money. And I actually had an agent say that to me once: we need this transaction to close. And I thought, oh, now it's never going to close, because like you say, everybody is just like sensing it and feeling I'm just getting forced to buy this house. And you absolutely cannot do that. So how do people?
Well, that's kind of the difference they talk about between doing business with people that are hungry versus those that are starving.
Yeah.
And if somebody's starving, then they're desperate and they show it. And somebody who's hungry on the other side of the coin is just stepping out to serve and do all of those sorts of things. But let me give you a real practical way of sort of, this is not the deep part of purpose, but this is the way that somebody can begin to think through. Mm-hmm. One of the things, I'm a tennis player. I taught tennis professionally earlier in my life, and I'm just in my first book, The On Purpose Person, I have this thing called a want list in the tournament. And so this is something that I did with a woman actually from your neck of the woods up in Boston. Mm-hmm. She came to Orlando for a workshop many, many years ago. And she was a very successful realtor who sold large houses to mostly transferring couples. Big corporations would bring somebody in, and they would say, here, get with this realtor, and then she would move them along. And she said, for these people, it was their 15th transfer in the last 20 years, and they knew the drill, and I was an impediment to their transaction. She said, I made great money, but it really wasn't very meaningful for her because she was just a cog.
Yeah.
And so we sat down, and there's a couple different ways to work this and this is both strategy, business, and personal satisfaction type of thing. One, the expression, there's niches and riches. And so at some level, you can look at it and say, geographically, where do I want to be a specialist? It could be a neighborhood, it could be a community, it could be a project of some sort, and when I say a project, like a gated community or whatever it may be, that you want to say, that's going to be my specialty. But more importantly, in her case, what we began to do is we listed the many different types of home buyers. And we actually did this. We pulled out her list of, because she'd been in the business for 20 years. We pulled out a list of her most recent transactions, 32 of them, and we put them into a tennis tournament with 32 brackets. Just randomly put them in there. And then I said to her, which one was more, I don't even know the people, so which one was more meaningful to you, this one or this one, this one or this one, this one or this one, this one? That we went through the tournament, and then we went to that, we got from 32 to 16, then from 16 to 8, from 8 to 4, and now the pattern's beginning to emerge.
Right.
From 4 to 2, and from 2 to 1. And at the end, what we really saw when we got to the, let's call it the semifinals, where there's, really 4 people left. These were all first-time home buyers.
Yeah, they're the best.
And she just said, I love working with them, because she was in her 50s, and she said, I get to be their mom. I mean, I just love this. It's like my kids. And she was all enthusiastic about it. And I said to her, well, let's build a business around first-time home buyers. It's not to say that you're going to turn down the other work.
Right.
But if you could build a business, and she said, well, I'd have to do a lot more transactions because they generally aren't buying as big a property. And I said, that's a decision you have.
Right.
And she said, okay. But, so she started getting involved in local PTAs. I mean, she was turning and burning real estate, having the greatest time working with all these young married couples, or not in today's world, they would be, or just couples.
Yeah.
And so, she literally exceeded what she was doing with the other work, but her joy in doing that was so meaningful to her, that it really sustained her. She was getting ready to get out of the business, and it actually kept her going for another 10 years till she retired pretty well off, and now lives in Arizona.
Yeah, isn't that beautiful? It's true. They're the cutest. They're the best because they're excited. They really rely on you. You're not just a paper pusher, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's yeah, that they're definitely my favorite.
Yeah. So I mean so she decided to transition her business and still do the other work, but I mean at that point it was check, 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 check.
Yeah.
With the people that were used to these relocations.
Yeah. Yeah. Relocations are, like you say, I mean, they're just like, eh. And they know they're not going to be there that long. They don't care about the house. It's not like we want to love this house. We want our dog to play in the backyard. You know, I mean, it is this totally different situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. That's a great example.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and I didn't put it together when I was on your website doing my own on purpose. I didn't put it together with your tennis background. How you have these set up into like their heats, you know, like, okay, we've got the, you know, we're going to the tennis competition. That's really ingenious. I like that.
Yeah. Well, it came out of an experience I had many years ago, kind of, reading some of the books that you're describing, like the Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich and the How to Win Friends and Influence People, and these classics, self-help books that are out there that I really just so spoke into my life when I was in my teens and into my 20s. And they kept saying, you need to know a purpose. You need to find your purpose. And I kept saying, well, how is that? And you need to know what's important. And so I started to write down, it wasn't necessarily purpose related work, but it was goals.
Mm-hmm.
And so goals are different than purpose, but I began to write a list of what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I ended up with a yellow pad where I had 200 and some different items on it. And I was like, this is overwhelming. And so because I have a real estate background, commercial real estate background, I'm actually still a Florida licensed real estate broker, believe it or not. I knew because of construction and design that architects take their blueprints and they break them into like mechanical, and there's all these different layers that are there. And I thought, well, I'll just break it into different life accounts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not unique to me, but I looked at it in terms of like your financial, your spiritual, your mental, emotional, your family, your finances. I just took all these different life accounts and I just assigned each one to a category. And then I ran tennis tournaments on all of them. And I came up with 7 specific wants one in each category. And then from that, I ran a tournament on the tournament. And this is all in the on-purpose person. So, there's actually a tool if people want, if they go to discoveryguide.net, there's a free tool that they can download. It's a 26-page document. And it's there. So that the formats are there, the explanation is there. But what happened is then I ran a tournament on the tournament and I came up with this, well, I can tell you what it was. It was to have children. My wife and I were in the middle of infertility and had been. And the second one, I was just turned 35 and I was eligible to play in the men's 35s tennis. And so I had determined that I wanted to play in the men's national grass court. I was a good tennis player, so I wanted to play in the men's national grass courts in Newport, Rhode Island. And so I began to work on getting in shape, getting my house in order, getting my finances in order, working out and doing all of those things. Now, the children thing, there was only so much I could contribute there. So I had this other one, but it had all these other implications to my business, to my health, to my finances, to everything.
Right.
And the true story that occurred is I was playing in a tennis tournament in Greenleaf, Florida, which is in the middle of the state. I had lost in the first round to the guy that eventually won the tournament, but I was put into the consolations and I worked my way through the consolations, and I knew that the grass courts were in September. I was climbing up the rankings in the state of Florida in order to qualify to play in the nationals. And so I knew that if I could win this consolation match, it would probably kick me over to where I'd be in the top, at least top 25 in the state at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was starting from 0 in January and July, so I'm working my way through the rankings. And again, this is the day before cell phones, and I get a phone call, and the tournament director says, your wife said, don't play. She's coming to pick you up. And I was like, what? I was getting ready to go into the finals of the consolations. And the guy I was playing was a friend of mine, and I knew I could beat him, but he could beat me too. We were pretty evenly matched. And it turned out we were in the middle of an in vitro fertilization cycle with a doctor, and they needed me, and they didn't want anything overheated. Without getting too graphic, because I had a date with a jar, and they were basically saying, she's coming to pick you up, you can't play. And I was mad. Yeah. And this was my dream, to play in the grass courts. This was crushing my dream, da, 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 da. And it was in that moment that I went back to that tournament that I had done in December and realized, wait a minute, the number one thing was children.
Yeah.
And to heck with the tennis tournament. It calmed me right down. It reordered me and gave me what I needed, so that when my wife appeared, I was not angry about it. The tournament director was very gracious. He gave me a withdrawal instead of a default, which is a medical withdrawal, which was kind of true.
Kind of true. You're going to the doctor's office.
And the nice part about it is I ended up qualifying and did get to go to the nationals, where I went 2 rounds and lost to a guy, and had a gorgeous, wonderful experience out in the Hamptons.
Yeah.
It was actually in the Hamptons, is where it was. It wasn't in Newport. It was in, we went to Newport News, Rhode Island, and saw that, but we were out in the Hamptons at the Meadows Club is what it was called.
Nice.
So,
and do you have children now?
Pardon me?
Do you have children now?
We do, not through that cycle, but we have a son who's 29 years old, and we have a daughter who's 27.
Congratulations.
And my wife did not give birth to the girl, but she did give birth to the boy. So
great.
Yeah,
nice.
We're very blessed.
Yes, oh, that's wonderful. That's a great story. Yeah, like, now it has to be now.
Yeah, I know. There's other funny parts to that story that I just won't tell. If we weren't recording, I might tell some other parts of that story.
Okay, later. We'll save that one for another day.
That's right.
Now, we've touched on this. We're kind of talking around it, but I want you to really focus and explain to us about how your 2-word on purpose statement, which I've gone through that process with you.
Okay.
Not in person, but virtually, but through your tools.
Yeah.
And just quickly tell me, why 2 words? How did you sort of come up with that?
Okay, I'll try to make it real fast. I'm a strategy guy at my heart. I'm a business guy, and so back in the 80s, when I was doing commercial real estate, both brokerage and really development, I actually ended up more in the development side. I left the real estate industry and started doing consulting work, general management strategy consulting work. I just found I was much much better at that than I was at the real estate, even though I did pretty good at the real estate. What I began to recognize is a lot of the clients that I was talking to, they would hire me because they had a business problem. And we would start to work on the business problem, but there was always this wall that we couldn't seem to penetrate. And so I began to look at it and say, strategically, what is going on? So I migrated to business problem to strategy. What are you trying to do with your business and why? And they would describe that to me. And then we would talk about, where do you want to take it and how do you want to get it there? So sort of the why is the purpose. Where do you want to go is the vision. How do you want to get there are the missions. And then what's important to you along the way are the values. So that's purpose, vision, mission, and values. So that I started off on the business side, but as I built relationships with these people, these owners of businesses, men and women, I then began to recognize if I asked them those same questions about their life, that I often found that their work was a job, but it wasn't meaningful.
Right.
So it goes right back to the meaningful money.
Yeah.
It just became a source of revenue for them, but their heart really wasn't in it. What we would do is, and in many cases their heart was in it, but what we would do is we would go back to personal purpose, vision, mission, and values. in these various areas of their life. We would define that, clarify that, then we would connect the purpose of the person with the purpose of the organization. And in doing that, it was remarkable because we would see dramatic increase in revenues and profits without doing a whole lot differently.
Just change
Oddly
the
enough,
mind, right?
it was real. Yeah, it was in their mind, and more as importantly, it was in their heart. Their heart was kind of set in a different way. There was a new and fresh perspective on their business. So they saw it as an expression of their purpose. Therefore, it was on purpose in my language, which is on purpose. And in other words, it was meaningful to them. And that meaning began to translate through to the rest of their team.
Yeah.
Now, there are some people that would reject that and violently reject it. I mean, some people would get really sort of ticked off. That's all, and they would leave. But that was sort of like a good thing that they would leave,
Right.
because
Exactly.
it provoked in them something else that was going on.
Yeah.
So they began to get the right people. Everything began to align in the business. And again, this takes time. And the truth is, it doesn't matter whether it's a big business or a solopreneur. The same sort of thing can go on. It's almost like when you go to a house and there's a key at the front and you turn it, all those tumblers line up and they turn. And it was almost like that for them, that something in them would turn and their life would open up and their business would follow.
Wow. That's so powerful.
It's totally cool to watch. It's a thrill.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's actually quite simple, the process you go through, and there are some, just to let people know, everyone should definitely go on your website, onpurpose.me. Is it on dash purpose?
No, it's just onpurpose.me.
On purpose.me. And then, you're given these options and you just sort of are choosing the one that resonates the most with you. And I'll share that mine ended up being liberating greatness.
Ah.
And I thought to myself, wow, that's really powerful, because I do feel like, and actually the book that I wrote is called Empowering Your Inner Millionaire, which is sort of like that same idea that like what you are is inside already, and you just have to set it free. And then, your next step is you go and you say, okay, let's look at the thesaurus and see some words that are similar to these words that maybe would resonate even more. And so now it is liberating abundance, which I like better than, and I didn't really think of greatness and abundance as being, similar, as being synonyms for each other, but apparently they are, and abundance just resonated with me more. So that's my new on purpose statement, is liberating abundance. And I thank you very much for that, because I like it and it speaks to me.
Yeah, well, that's an awesome, first of all, great description of the process. Second of all, great way to use the message, because at onpurpose.me, not only do they get their 2-word purpose statement, but there's also a program that comes with it called Poured Wisdom, which teaches you how to do some of the things that you did, which is how to refine it to make it even tighter for you. So on a scale of 1 to 10, is it like a 10?
Yeah, I think it is a 10, because then the next step, right, just to kind of bring people along with me a little bit, because I thought of that as what I'm doing for others, right? Liberating their abundance and showing them their abundance. But then it encourages you to look and see how in the 7 areas of your life, to apply that. And I thought, oh yes, liberating my own abundance, right? And letting my own, star shine through. And I thought, oh, okay, that's even a nicer thing to, another nice thing to think about, because that also self-improvement, right? We're always looking to improve ourselves. And it's been I'm only, I think, on day 5. It's been a really joyful process. I've very, very much enjoyed it.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, and let me share with you, I mean, the other part of that is you've got 2/3 of it right now. So the way you will look at it is, and this is, again, a lot of this is perspective and point of view, however you choose to describe it. But purpose in the mind, body, spirit dimension, purpose is in the spirit side. So you can look at it in terms of, depending upon one's sort of spiritual background, whether it's Christian, Jewish, Hindu, whatever it may be, a pantheist, we'll just call it God or the universe, whatever, Mother Nature, whatever you want to call it. But there's this something that existed before we were born and something that will likely exist after we die. So call that God. So here's what's really fun about it, is when you look at it and say, how has God or the universe been conspiring to be liberating my abundance? And now you begin to look at the world from the point of view. It's really easy to look at the world and get negative. But if you look at the world and say, wait a minute, what if it is conspiring for my benefit? And it's been attempting to liberate, God has been attempting to liberate my abundance all the way along the way since the day I was born.
Wow.
Now you look at it and say, how do I tap into that on a more consistent basis? So for some people that may be prayer, meditation, reading, tapping into that wisdom, whatever it may be that you're trying to tap into in that regard. And then it fills you, so you're in a position to pass it over.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like a conduit. For those that are techie people out there, think of it as bandwidth. If you have bad bandwidth between you and God, and you have a fiber optic cable between you and others, you're going to get burned out. It's not going to be meaningful.
Yeah.
But if you can build a fiber optic cable running throughout the whole conduit,
Yeah.
where you're sort of that transformer that sits in the middle of that, and you're either raising it up or raising it down.
Yeah.
That's really what's going on. So that's the techie or the electrical engineers that are out there listening, who are probably going to correct me.
there's some jargon, right, that you got wrong.
Right, I just don't know. Hey, I was a business major, not an engineer, even though I went to Lehigh, which is
an engineering school. Wow, interesting. I can't wait to finish up the second half of that.
Well, that's cool. Now, are you looking at other ways now to apply it so that, and see, here's what's sort of fun is you can apply it to your career right now, as in terms of your real estate career.
Yeah.
When you look at it and say, how am I liberating abundance in your career? So talk to me about that.
Well, I have a whole, I wrote this book, Empowering Your Inner Millionaire, and it's all about real estate investing.
Mm-hmm.
So I work with new investors, and I, do like seminars and things like that for folks who are new investors. And it's just like a first-time home buyer, only you're actually helping them rather than getting into debt. You're hopefully helping them to create some financial independence for themselves, or at least to try to get some type of passive income. And so that's where I feel like I'm, finding these folks who have the ambition and they have the ideas and stuff, and they know vaguely that they want to do this, and just giving them a little bit of direction and some education and, guidance to help them to create this abundance, a stream of abundance in their life. And, when people start out, especially young people, if someone would have said to me at 18 or, when did I buy my first house? 21 years old. If someone would have said to me, oh, instead of buying that single family house, why don't you buy a multifamily? Do you know what I mean? Who knows where I'd be right now? Instead of waiting until I'm in my 50s to start thinking that way, I feel like you're setting a person up for a lifetime of abundance by helping them to create a passive income stream.
Right. Well, what's also sort of fun about that, to tie it back to this meaningful money piece, is what you're really describing is what a very influential real estate person I know, a guy named Jim Seneff, who founded CNL Real Estate Investment Trust. And Jim always talked about the miracle of compound interest.
Yes.
And so if you can take a young person and have them own property. In fact, my son and his fiance are in the middle of buying a house right now. And so it's very real for me, but it's the sort of thing that somehow my son has gleaned that in his business, because he has a metal fabricating and welding business.
Wow.
That in his business, if he buys tools and equipment today, that he's got 40 years to amortize that, and that it's a wise investment to have zero debt, pay off tools as fast as you can. I mean, he's buying tools that are $25,000 tables for plasma cutting, things like that.
Yeah.
So, he's realizing those sorts of things because he says it will produce more revenue for me, and I'll have it a long time, and it'll move my business along faster by foregoing some things now in order to get what I can later.
Yeah. Well, you've trained him right, obviously. He's got that.
Well, no, I wish I could say that. I think he's smart, and he reads, and he's figured it out. I used to do a program on college campuses many years ago that was called Generation Extraordinary. when Gen X was in college is probably the best way to describe it. And I would teach the students that if you'll put $1 a day away starting now, and then you compound that at, at a reasonable interest rate, that you'll be a millionaire by the time you're like 55.
Yeah.
If you just did $1 a day for the rest of your life, $30 a month, you'll be a millionaire. That's your plan. That's your backup plan.
Yeah.
Then go whatever else you need to do, work
Yeah.
on it. That was sort of the steady, the tortoise and the hare. That was sort of the tortoise approach.
Yeah. And somebody told me if when a child is born, if you take $500 and like put it into an index fund, that by the time they're 60, they'll be able to, basically live on that money because it's going to be over $1 million, which is cool, which is very cool. But we didn't do that. I didn't do that anyway.
We didn't either.
No.
I learned these things too late. So if somebody's young and listening, please take these mature adults' responsibility and lessons which somebody said to us.
Learn from our mistakes, the law of compounding interest, because it's magic.
When you're 29, you never think you'll be 60.
Exactly. That's for sure. Well, I know we have to wrap up. I want to be respectful of your time. I know you have another meeting, but can you tell me real quickly, first of all, how can folks reach you? What's the best way for people to reach out to you if they want to take the On Purpose test challenge, or however you phrase it?
Well, the best way to do that is go to onpurpose.me. That's where the 2-word test is. And then they can also reach me through that website, or they can go to onpurpose.com with or without the hyphen. Onpurpose.com is also our site where we've got the books and all of those other goodies of it. Information. It will also lead you back to onpurpose.me. And if you need to reach out to me, it's just kwmccarthy at on-purpose.com. And I check email a lot. It's overwhelming at times, but I do try to respond and really give people a thoughtful response so that they can be helped in that regard. I mean, our vision here is what we call the On Purpose Planet, where every person is on purpose.
Nice.
Yep.
So tell me, what's your favorite book? What would you, if you could only have one book on a desert island that's something you come back to again and again, what is it?
I'm a person of faith, so I would say the Bible.
Yeah.
The Bible is just so rich, and I wasn't always that way, but what happened is early in my life I read a lot of self-help literature, and I really loved it. And then whenever I got married, I ended up sitting in a church for the first time in a long, long time, and I was listening to the pastor preach, and I went, "This is vaguely familiar, but it actually is better than what I've been reading." And I realized that I'd found the source material that was pure intellect. There was nothing going on in my heart, okay, in that regard. Yeah. But it was pure intellect, where it was like, this is really interesting stuff. So I began to read the Bible in depth. I didn't understand very much of it because it's really a foreign language in many ways, and I understand that there's a lot of jargon and a lot of things, that different words and different contexts and all of those sorts of things. But that really opened my eyes, and now I just have such a deep appreciation. If somebody's wondering where do you start, just open the book of Proverbs in the Old Testament.
Okay.
And there's 31 Proverbs, and you can read one a day in a month, and then start back over. And there's wonderful translations now, like there's a Message. The Message has a wonderful just little Proverbs book, and that's the book of wisdom, and it speaks a lot about money. So that would be, and within the Bible, if I had to say maybe just one, it might be the book of Proverbs.
All right, great. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much. I'm really glad we were finally able to connect, and I think we have a lot more to talk about. So hopefully you'll come back and we can do another episode.
Absolutely, we'd love to, Chris. Delightful to meet you, and I just think what you're doing for the world in terms of helping people, really empower their inner millionaire is just an awesome idea. Because it is that abundance. It is liberating that abundance. So it really does inform how you're doing that. So kudos to you, and nice to meet you, and be on purpose with it.
Yes, thank you very much, Kevin. And thank you for my on purpose statement, because I'm telling you, it's opening up some mental doors, some thought process, which is very powerful.
Right, good. I'm glad to hear it's stirring in there.
It is stirring.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording.